on the NewsChannel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Tonight we are looking at Nashville's building boom. You see cranes everywhere, but tonight we're looking at the construction workers behind all of the construction that is going on. How are they paid? What are the conditions they are working in? And we're happy to have with us Victor White. He is with the Southeastern Carpenters Union. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ben.
You say what we're seeing in Nashville right now with all of this money that's coming in here, with this huge building boom, we're seeing widespread wage theft. What do you mean when you say wage theft?
Well, wage theft and tax fraud combined. What's happened, Ben, is we've got a lot of unscrupulous contractors who've moved into our area. They'll hire subcontractors that will work people 56 to 70 hours a week, pay them off the books straight time. They're not getting their time and a half, their overtime. They're getting cheated out of their overtime pay. A lot of this is being done on, well, they're exploiting a lot of the migrant labor coming in. The undocumented immigrants are being exploited terribly here in Nashville. Music City is being, you might as well say it's being constructed on the backs of immigrant workers.
And these immigrant workers don't have the power to stand up and say, the way I'm being paid or the conditions I'm working in are wrong or against the law.
Well, you got to understand, Ben, these folks are kind of new to our country. They don't understand U.S. law. A lot of them speak broken English. The ones that speak more fluent English really can't comprehend reading and writing, so they slap papers out in front of them, get them to sign them. But we've had people intimidated. You know, if you say anything, you know, we'll turn you over to ICE or call ICE on you, things of that nature. But mostly they just don't understand the laws, U.S. laws. So a lot of folks are still ignorant that they're supposed to get time and a half after 40 hours, paid off the books. They get straight time all the way through. There goes your workers' comp, your unemployment insurance, your federal withholding, Social Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no deductions. And I'm not saying that's with every company, construction outfit in Music City, but it is rampant throughout the city. It is rampant
as we're seeing all these buildings go up. Now, some would say that's going to cut down on the building costs, and maybe that's a good thing. I mean, why is this a concern for everyone out there? Not just the workers who are being exploited, but why is this a concern for everyone out there?
Well, you have to figure it. Is that best value? Is that what we want for Music City? Anytime that you're losing revenue in the city or the state, that's money that could be going to pay school teachers, pave streets, hire police, firemen, just all sorts of things that revenue could be used for. So anytime somebody's not paying their fair share of revenue, they're cheating everyone else. Above and beyond that, there was a lot of fair contractors here in Music City before a lot of these global enmities come moving in. You know, they were honorable, reputable men. They believed in a good reputation, doing fair business. They complied with the law. So when you have unscrupulous enmities come to town and exploit immigrant workers, they come in with a 20% advantage in the bid. That gives a fair contractor, the honest man, a 20% disadvantage.
So if laws allow immigrant workers to be exploited, it makes it less likely that companies will hire American workers.
Sure. And the laws are in place. We just need vigorous enforcement to go after these companies that are committing the wage theft and the tax fraud. We've got laws on the books, but we could actually use some enforcement but what's happened is we actually have some enforcement agencies, okay? They've been stripped of their resources. They don't have much human resource. Their financial resources stripped. So that puts them down to where they can't, they can only do so many cases a year. So when they're just bombarded with this wave of corruption in the industry that we've seen here in Music City and all across the South as far as that goes, their hands are tied in a lot of instances. There's a whole lot of things the state of Tennessee could do, there's a whole lot of things feds could do, and a whole lot of things even the city municipalities could do to assist this situation.
And all right, so a few years ago, I guess it's gotten more widespread. Is that right? I mean,
yeah,
you said there were a few.
It actually really got off to a good start back around 99 or 2000. So we're done into 2019. We watched it grow all the way through, continuously ramping up.
One of the manifestations of this is workers must have workers' compensation.
Yes.
And I'm reading something here that says almost half of construction workers, it was reported, do not have workers' compensation.
That's correct.
42%.
Yes.
Again, how does that impact everyone? It's bad for the construction worker. How is it bad for everyone out there?
Well, you take a fair contractor, that raises his comp premiums. When you've got half not being paid, somebody's got to make up the difference. So when you take a reputable contractor, reputable agency, that boosts up their comp package. Premiums rise.
So they're paying, they're paying everybody. And then what happens when one of these workers without workers' comp gets hurt on the job?
Well, in various things, we get a lot of reports, and we've seen a lot of things through the years. Sometimes when a man gets hurt on the job, especially if he's an undocumented worker, okay, an immigrant, a lot of times they'll throw them in the truck, haul them to the emergency room, and say, go in there and get treated, don't tell them you were on the job, We've seen that happen multiple times. Sometimes they'll actually say, well, this guy just hard in, and they'll get him on the comp and get him some workers' comp. So it just depends on what project and what subcontractor that he's performing the actual work for.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is a huge industry in Nashville, but what you've seen in the last couple of years, why can't we enforce this better? Are these companies big enough that they are influencing government not to enforce it?
Well,
or is it something else?
It makes one ponder and make presumptions sometimes, but a lot of these GCs, a lot of the high rises you see here, and we've been watching some in particular and trying to help the workers. These are global companies. They can work anywhere in the world, multi-billion-dollar companies. And they're the ones that seem to have some of the biggest issues. And it's not the GC per se, but they'll hire.
The GC is the general contractor. It's not the general contractor.
And then they'll hire somebody to do the interior systems. And that party will hire labor brokers. And they'll bring in a mobile workforce and exploit them.
When you say they'll bring in a mobile workforce, so let's go over how this works. So there's a big contractor who is awarded the contract to build this big, beautiful building.
Yes.
And then they have a bunch of subcontractors. Mm-hmm. What we hear is there are not enough workers here in Davidson County, that there's a worker shortage. So there are not enough workers. So these labor brokers, part of what they do is they go out and find workers. Is that right? They go out and find the people that are going to put in the drywall or the people that are going to do the electrical stuff. They go out and find these workers. You're saying what they're doing is exploiting, in many cases, these workers.
Yes. It's very simple. When you have a workforce that isn't very literate in the English language as far as reading and writing, understanding it, you bring them in, think about the cost factors you're saving, the bottom dollar. It's all about greed. These workers don't understand OSHA, they don't understand safety protections on the job, they don't understand if they work 70 hours that 30 of those hours were supposed to be at a time and a half rate.
And when you say
when you're undocumented, how do you complain? I mean, there's a fear factor there too. You know, if you stand up and complain, you might get in trouble, you know, in their mind.
When you say they bring them in, what do you mean? How do they bring them in? These are not people that are already in Nashville? How are they bringing them in?
Some are, because now that Nashville has grown and a lot of the undocumented workers came here and have settled here. But if you go look around these projects, you'll see a lot of out-of-state tags. And a lot of these workers come in from like Atlanta, Alpharetta, Georgia. That's two of the epicenters where these labor brokers work from. But they also come in from Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi.
Do these labor brokers bring them in and then actually put them up in housing and then transport them back and forth?
Yeah, that's a very common form of supply lodging. They'll rent a 3-bedroom apartment, and they'll you know, have 8, 9 men staying in a 3-bedroom apartment. Over in East Tennessee, we've seen them go rent a whole trailer park, you know, trailer parks to put up folks on a very large job. And at that time, I think it was a hospital and a casino over around Murphy and a hospital over that way. But very common to supply lodging. Very common to supply lodging
and then drive them back and forth. Now, they get around the law of workers' comp and some of these other things by saying they're independent contractors. Is that right?
That's called misclassification. And a lot of times they'll have someone sign a paper saying he's an independent contractor. He don't even know what he's signing a lot of times, you know, if he can't read the documentation. Because most times, well, 99% of the time it's printed in English. So they have them sign through all these papers, and that makes him an independent contractor. All right, then you put him in a crew of 7 or 8 more men, and you direct them. You guys are going to be here at 7 in the morning. That's what time we start work. A lot of times it's 5:30 or 6, especially in warm weather. And you'll have your first break at 9. At noon you can take lunch, and then we'll finish the day out. If you're not an independent contractor, it's not reasonable to assume that you've got a crew of 8 people being directed by the original subcontractor, told what to do, when to do, where to do, how to do, and assume that all 8 of those are independent contractors.
Because an independent contractor works for himself. He should be able to determine his own hours and his own schedule, essentially. You get the job done, but it's on your terms.
Yeah.
Clearly this is not on their own terms.
And on your own schedule,
but that's not happening.
No.
All right, is this only with undocumented workers, or does this happen with desperate American workers?
Primarily only with undocumented workers. Very few. Actually, it's undocumented. Now, some documented, what I'm saying is it's happening with the Latin immigrants, 99%. Some of them have been here long enough to get a green card or documentation or, you know, come through legally. But it's primarily with Latin immigrants that's immigrated here.
Primarily. All right, so then where do you come down on immigration? Because I know we have a lot of callers who are concerned that that is responsible for taking American jobs and that kind of thing. I mean, where do you come down on that?
Yeah, let's discuss that a little further. That's mostly faceted there, because I'm totally on the side of the workers. You just said it a while ago and hit the nail on the head. We do have a shortage of workers, and I know this because I and my staff and our union, and I'm union, and these folks are non-union, and I can answer all that too. But we're constantly recruiting. If you was to, well, you see on TV sometimes, you see people say, send the immigrants back, deport, whatever. It would shut the whole country down. The construction industry would collapse without the immigrant workers. We're not complaining about immigrant workers. That's brother and sister, in my trade, brother and sister carpenters, but also brother and sister construction workers throughout the industry. But the whole industry of the United States would completely collapse without them.
These big corporations.
These workers. What we don't need is to exploit them. You know, pay them a fair wage, but especially pay them what they're owed, what they earn.
But what is the incentive for a big corporation that's trying to get a big building built on a budget to change things? What is the incentive? I mean, here they have a workforce that's cheaper.
It's absolutely cheaper, and greed controls the bid. Look, I explained to you a while ago that these unscrupulous contractors, because of knocking off the labor costs, the wage theft, and because of the tax fraud and the comp fraud, they can go in and undercut a legitimate contractor at 20% disadvantage. They don't really do the 20. They just need to beat him by 3 or 4%. And those other percentage points straight in the pocket profit. Now, when you're working immigrants that don't understand or comprehend the English language as far as the written documents, look at the safety violations you can commit and save money. And a lot of these, over half of the workers out there from the immigrants hadn't even had OSHA. You know, they don't even know what OSHA is. And we get out in the field and talk to them a lot. A lot of them have come in with us and taken OSHA, and light bulbs go off, and they see that they're supposed to be paid time and a half after 40 hours. They know that they're supposed to have the taxes taken out and the comp and all that. So, you know, once those light bulbs come off, they help us educate other brothers and sisters out there that are still working in the dark and being exploited.
A couple more questions before we take a break. Then we're going to start taking calls. We have several calls, so people hold on. All right, so how do you change this? I mean, what do you do?
Well, the workers, it's all about education, indoctrination, and getting them to realize that they can stand up to demand be paid what they earned. You know, if I work 50 hours, you owe me 10 hours of time and a half, just like anybody else in America. The other thing is the state, the federal. On the federal level, we need immigration reform. We need extensive, comprehensive immigration reform. On the state level, our state legislatures could do simple things, and our city municipalities could extremely assist us. Just pass ordinances, a stop work order. If it's exposed, if it's happening on that project, shut the project down until it's resolved.
Does that happen?
Well, in California, there's states that have that. But here in Tennessee, we don't have a stop work order.
We know it's happening.
We know it's happening.
But there are no stop work orders.
No stop work orders.
And then it gets back to what I'm saying. I don't know.
It gets back to the greed. If I can get away with it, I will. And the accountability, you know, there's not a whole lot of accountability out there. And when you find these folks, a lot of times they'll pay a fine and go on, but a lot of times they don't pay the fine. They just change the name of the company. And what Tennesseans don't know is when you put up a little LLC or corporation and you get cited for something and you're fined, in the state of Tennessee, you simply change the name of the company and business as usual. Now, if you get caught the second time, it's the first offense all over again. Every time you get caught, it's a first offense.
Because it's not the big general contractor often that's being fined, right? It's these little brokers, they're little companies that are bringing this in. So all they do when they get caught is they change their name.
Yes, it's no liability whatsoever on the general contractors. That's why a stop work order,
that hurts everybody.
That would shut the job down. That would get the general contractor's attention, and the general contractor would stop allowing those practices on their projects.
And now, all right, how does the union play into this? People say, okay, well, you're just trying to get more people in the union. You know, what do you say about that? What is the role of the union, and what do you say if people are saying, well, you're just trying to get more people in the union?
Well, you know, my boss, Thomas Jenkins, he reminds me every week, reminds all our staff, but we are carpenters first. And as carpenters, every brother and sister out there in the carpenter trade or the carpenter craft is our brother and sister. It's our job to lift them up. You know, when you see someone drowning, you don't throw them an anchor. you know, you try to reach out and save them. Now, whether they become union or not, that's their personal choice. But like I say, it's a multifaceted answer. Another thing is a level playing field. Our contractors and our union members deserve a level playing field. So if we help these that are being exploited and trodden down, if we rise them up to level the playing field, then we can compete anywhere, anytime, because we have the skills, we have the training, we have the knowledge. And of course, like, you know, I recruit all the time, so any of these folks that want to come and stand beside me on the union side of the fence, they're welcome.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you're on the line, hold on. We're talking with Victor White, Southeastern Carpenters Union. We're talking about the construction in Nashville, the working conditions, how construction workers are paid, basically the workers behind the building boom. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.